Have you ever looked around, truly looked, and felt a deep disconnect, like something fundamental is off, something is subtly wrong with the world presented to you, but when you glance at others, they seem fine, oblivious, content in the noise, lost in the entertainment, resigned to the surface? Do you feel like you're perceiving things others miss, seeing layers beneath the obvious, noticing patterns hidden in plain sight, while everyone else seems anesthetized, walking through life in a comfortable haze? Perhaps you've tried. You've attempted to share a deeper thought, a question that burns inside you, in a casual chat, over coffee, at a gathering. And what happened? Uncomfortable silence descended. Eyes glazed over. Empty stares met yours. Or worse, disdain, thinly veiled as a joke. A quick change of subject. A nervous laugh that dismisses everything. Listen closely. This feeling isn't you being broken. It isn't arrogance. It isn't a flaw. The truth is stark. The more you think, the more you truly see. And the more you see, the more disconnected you can become from the mainstream, from the accepted narrative, from the comfortable slumber most inhabit. This isn't accidental. It's not just bad luck. In conversation, it is a pattern, a sometimes cruel, deeply ingrained pattern. Society often pushes away those who dare to look beyond the veil, those who question, those who refuse to simply accept. You are not arrogant for sensing shallowness in common discourse. You are not snobbish for preferring meaningful silence over empty chatter. You are not broken because you don't fit neatly into the boxes provided. You are awake, or perhaps you are awakening. And the world, in many ways, fears the awakened Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for his ruthless clarity, his unflinching look at existence. He understood this profoundly. He wrote words that echo through time for people like you. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsociable. But why? Not because the intellectual consciously withdraws, seeking isolation. Often it's because the world pushes them away, subtly, sometimes overtly. It rejects what doesn't comfortably fit. Deep intelligence. The kind that isn't just about reciting facts learned in school, not just about solving technical problems, but the kind that probes the meaning of things, that questions the foundations we stand on, that confronts the inherent pain and absurdity of existence with open eyes. This kind of intelligence is often perceived as a threat. Why a threat? Because it challenges the illusions people cling to. It disturbs the comfortable narratives they've built their lives around. It questions the very structures they rely on for security. We live in a society, let's be honest, where displaying wealth is often admired, where showcasing physical beauty is celebrated, where even wielding power is respected, or at least acknowledged. But wisdom, true, deep, unsettling wisdom, that's different. It's rarely paraded. Often, it's hidden. Why? Because it's unsettling. It strips away pretense. It illuminates the shadows where comfortable ignorance resides. It reveals the cracks in the facade, and most people, if given the choice, prefer the comfortable shadow. They prefer blindness to the stark, sometimes harsh, light of truth. A truth that once seen, you can no longer ignore. It changes you. So, if you're listening right now, because you feel out of place, misunderstood, perhaps even unwanted in certain circles, like your thoughts are too heavy, too deep, too much, know this deep in your core. This is not your fault. It's not a sign of your inadequacy. It is, in many ways, the price you pay. The price for seeing too much, for feeling too deeply, for thinking too clearly in a world that often prefers haze. But don't despair. Within this perceived burden, there is strength. There is untapped potential. There is a unique form of greatness, the greatness of authenticity, the courage to face reality, and there is a path forward. Not a path to magically fit into a world that wasn't designed for your depth. That's often a fool's errand, leading only to self-betrayal. No, the path is about learning to exist with wisdom within this world, to navigate its currents without losing your essence, without dimming your light, without silencing the truth you perceive. This is not a lecture for the masses. This is a conversation with you, the one who feels different, the one tired of being told you're too serious or too complicated, the one who has discovered that thinking deeply can sometimes be a solitary act, but also an act of immense courage, an act of profound self-respect. That's what we will explore together. We will delve into why this happens, why you feel this way, and how you can harness this unique perspective. If these words resonate, if they touch that place inside you that often feels unseen, stay with me. Because finally, someone is going to articulate what you've likely always known. What you've felt in your bones, but perhaps no one around you had the courage or the clarity to admit. Let's talk about that discomfort, that awkwardness you feel when you try to just be yourself. In social settings, at work, even sometimes with family or old friends, it's not just in your head, it's not paranoia. There's a real, deeply rooted psychological mechanism at play. It explains why intelligent people, especially those who think critically, analytically, existentially, often provoke negative reactions, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. Even when they haven't said or done anything remotely offensive, this phenomenon has a name. Let's call it the mirror effect. Picture this. You walk into a room, you join a conversation. Maybe you don't even say much initially, but your presence, your way of listening, your energy, it's different. Then perhaps you speak, you share, an observation that goes beyond the surface. You question an idea that everyone else accepts without thinking, or you simply demonstrate a clarity, a precision in your thought. In that moment, something shifts, not just in the conversation, but within the other person, or people. It's like an internal short circuit is triggered, without you intending to, without you directly criticizing or judging. Your presence, your words, your very way of thinking forces the other person to see themselves, and that reflection, it's often deeply uncomfortable. Why? Because many people, perhaps most, construct their identity around fragile structures, inherited beliefs they've never examined, socially conditioned values they've passively absorbed, copied opinions that offer a sense of belonging. Their sense of self isn't built on a foundation of genuine, rigorous self-examination or a search for truth. It's built on conformity, on borrowed ideas, on avoiding the difficult questions. So when you appear authentic, questioning, seeking depth, you inadvertently become a mirror reflecting their own potential lack, their unexamined assumptions, their intellectual complacency, their hidden insecurities, their underlying emptiness or confusion they work so hard to ignore. And let's be honest, nobody enjoys looking into a mirror that shows them something unflattering, especially when they weren't prepared for it, when they see emptiness where they thought there was substance, insecurity where they projected confidence, ignorance where they assumed knowledge. Your thought isn't just a thought, it becomes a silent invitation, an invitation to introspection, to self-assessment. And introspection, genuine introspection, can be painful. It requires effort. It requires honesty. It can dismantle cherished illusions. Therefore, you become a symbolic threat. You are a living, breathing reminder of everything the other person has chosen not to think about, not to question, not to see, not to feel. And what is the most common, most instinctive reaction to a perceived threat? Defense, protection, rejection, They might shut down. They might subtly mock you. They might change the subject abruptly. They might label you as weird or intense or negative. They push you away not because of who you are, but because of what you awaken in them, what you force them to momentarily confront within themselves. The problem isn't you. The problem is the reflection you cast. The problem is the slumber they don't want disturbed. Schopenhauer's insight cuts deep here. He said elevated intellect often finds itself lonely. Why? Because society instinctively rejects what it doesn't understand, or perhaps what it doesn't want to understand. Because understanding might require uncomfortable change. There's a cruel, simple truth in this. When someone rejects you for being too deep or too thoughtful, they are often, consciously or unconsciously, trying to protect their own fragile self-image, their carefully constructed comfort zone, their unexamined life. It's not a rational process on their part. It's instinctive. It's an ego defense mechanism kicking in, protecting the status quo of their inner world. That's why discussing existential themes, reflecting on the complexities of the human condition, questioning social norms or unchallenged assumptions, can feel like stepping on invisible landmines, like you're violating an unspoken taboo. You are, without meaning to, threatening a mental structure. A structure built precisely to keep that person feeling safe, safe within their illusions, safe within the superficial, safe from the unsettling depths you seem so comfortable exploring. They don't want to wake up. Not really. The sleep, however shallow, feels safer, more predictable, less demanding. And you? You're the unwelcome sound of the alarm clock, ringing in a room that prefers to stay dark. But don't fool yourself into thinking this is just a modern problem, a consequence of social media or fast-paced living. This pattern is ancient, woven into the fabric of human history. Throughout the ages, the great thinkers, the visionaries, the questioners have often been marginalized, ridiculed, ignored, silenced, or worse, not because they were wrong. Often history proved them right, but because they dared to be the mirror, the clear, unflinching mirror in a room full of people wearing masks, people clinging desperately to their illusions. The crucial question then becomes, why? Why does society, as a whole, seem to prefer these masks? Why does it favor comfort, even illusory comfort, over the potentially liberating but often challenging truth? What is so fundamentally frightening about thinking deeply, about questioning the status quo? The answer cuts even deeper. It lies in the fundamental operating principle of mass society. A principle that inevitably pushes people like you to the fringes. Get ready. We need to touch the wound directly now. We need to understand why society systemically prefers comfort over truth, and why your intelligence, your clarity, makes you an outsider by default. If this is striking a chord, if you feel understood, perhaps for the first time in a long time, consider subscribing. Join this conversation. Your support allows these truths to be shared. Thank you. Now let's face it. Truth, raw and unvarnished, is often difficult. It can be painful. It destabilizes. It uproots what we consider normal. It challenges our sense of security, our identity, our place in the world. And because of this inherent discomfort, society, functioning like a large, complex organism, has developed a powerful survival mechanism, a core operating principle. It prioritizes stability. It prioritizes predictability. It prioritizes collective comfort above almost everything else, especially above individual disruptive truth. Anything or anyone that seriously threatens this collective comfort zone is subtly or overtly neutralized, rejected, marginalized, labeled as problematic. Think about what deep intelligence truly entails. It's not just the capacity to learn facts or solve equations, it's the ability, often innate, sometimes cultivated, to see hidden connections, to perceive underlying patterns, to question what everyone else takes for granted, to distrust common sense when it doesn't align with deeper observation or logic. But here's the fundamental conflict. Common sense, the shared assumptions, the unwritten rules. This is the very lubricant that keeps the machinery of society running smoothly. It allows for routine, it maintains social order, it defines roles and expectations, making interaction predictable. Truth, especially a deep or inconvenient truth, when revealed by someone who sees beyond the surface, it throws a wrench into those gears. It disrupts the smooth functioning. It challenges the established order. It questions the very foundation of that common sense. This is why the deep thinker, the person who questions fundamentals, is rarely seen by the mainstream as a valuable wise person, a guide. Instead, they are often perceived as a problem, a disruption, a source of unwelcome complexity, someone who makes things difficult. Schopenhauer saw this with piercing clarity. He believed that most people exist in a state of, let's call it, voluntary illusion, driven by what he termed the will, a blind, relentless striving, a desire not primarily to understand the world in its complex, often painful truth, but simply to survive within it, to navigate it with the minimum possible discomfort, to satisfy immediate needs and desires. In this context, the genuine search for truth becomes almost an anti-social activity. It demands questioning the collective narrative. It requires the courage to break away from the herd. It necessitates a willingness to face uncertainty. And perhaps most terrifyingly for many, it requires a readiness to lose cherished beliefs, to admit that what you always thought was solid ground might actually be quicksand, and who willingly wants to lose a comfort of their lifelong beliefs, even if those beliefs are based on illusion, even if they are in essence lies. Comforting lies often feel safer than destabilizing truths. This explains why society, through its institutions and norms, consistently rewards conformity. It rewards obedience. Think about it. The student who perfectly repeats the teacher's formulas without deeper questioning often gets the highest grades. The employee who diligently follows orders without challenging the process often gets the promotion. The citizen who unquestioningly accepts the prevailing narratives and opinions of the majority is considered well-adjusted, normal, a good citizen. Meanwhile, the individual who thinks for themselves, who raises uncomfortable questions, who points out inconsistencies, who challenges the status quo, is frequently labeled arrogant, difficult, negative, problematic, subversive, not a team player. Do you see now why you often feel out of place? It's not a personal failing. You represent the exception, and the exception, by its very nature, threatens the rule of conformity, the rule of comfort, the rule of unquestioning acceptance. Is it any wonder that the most popular content online, in the media, is often fast-paced, superficial, sensational, designed for quick consumption and easy digestion, designed to distract, not to provoke deep thought? Genuine intelligence, deep thinking, is frightening to the collective, because it requires something increasingly rare and undervalued in our hyper-stimulated world. It requires pause. It requires reflection. It requires quiet contemplation, and to simply stop, to disengage from the constant stream of distractions, to actually think. In this world, that act itself is becoming almost revolutionary, almost an act of rebellion. While the masses are encouraged to chase the next hit of dopamine, the next fleeting pleasure, the next easy answer, The thinker walks a different path, often a slower, more deliberate path, a path that leads towards complexity, towards nuance, towards discomfort, towards the hard questions. And that makes the thinker dangerous to the system. Not physically dangerous usually, but dangerous to the established order of thought, dangerous to the comfort of the collective illusion, the entire system in many ways, culture, media, even parts of the educational system, seems subtly calibrated to keep you distracted, not engaged at a deep level, to keep you consuming, not questioning, to keep you entertained, not enlightened. From a young age, we are trained, encouraged, rewarded for fitting in, for learning the rules, for accepting the given framework, not for questioning its validity, not for seeing its limitations, not for dismantling it to understand how it works. And when someone like you, perhaps, manages to escape this conditioning, or was never fully susceptible to it, and begins to see the gears turning behind the facade, begins to question the operating system itself, society's defense mechanisms kick in. It tries to isolate the virus of independent thought, marginalize the questioner, protect itself from the infection of deep inquiry. But here's a crucial, perhaps hopeful thought. What if this supposed virus, this tendency towards deep thinking, is actually the cure for the pervasive sense of emptiness, the underlying anxiety, the existential void that so many people feel but cannot name or explain? What if the very thing society pushes away is the key to a more meaningful existence? Why then? Why does society insist on treating the thinker, the questioner, the seeker of depth as an enemy, as an outsider, as someone to be handled with suspicion? The answer takes us further back. It lies in the historical precedent, in the consistent, painful, undeniable loneliness experienced by those who dared to see beyond the veil. Throughout history, across cultures. In the next part of our conversation, we need to confront this historical pattern. We need to understand why the brightest minds, the most courageous thinkers, have so often been rejected, misunderstood, and isolated during their lifetimes, and why this historical pattern is likely playing out in its own way in your life right now. Prepare yourself. Understanding this is crucial for your own journey. The loneliness you sometimes feel, that sense of being on the outside looking in, it's not a mistake in your path. It's not a sign you've done something wrong. In many ways, it is the path itself, a recurring, almost inevitable pattern that accompanies those who refuse to skim the surface of life, those who insist on plumbing the depths. History is a harsh teacher, but a clear one on this point, time and time again. Whenever an individual has dared to think too deeply, to see too clearly, to speak truths that the majority found uncomfortable or inconvenient, that person has faced isolation, rejection, often persecution. And we're not talking about obscure figures lost to time. We're talking about some of the most pivotal, groundbreaking geniuses humanity has ever produced. Thinkers and innovators whose ideas eventually shaped the world, but who suffered for their clarity during their own lives. Consider Socrates. In ancient Athens, the cradle of democracy and philosophy, he was sentenced to death. His crime, officially, corrupting the youth and impiety. The reality, he taught people to question, to examine their own beliefs, to think for themselves, rather than blindly accepting tradition or authority. He was awakening dormant minds, and the powers that be found that dangerous. Consider Galileo Galilei, a brilliant astronomer who dared to suggest the Earth revolved around the Sun, based on his observations, based on evidence. He was challenging centuries of accepted dogma, backed by the immense power of the church. He was forced, under threat of torture and execution, to publicly renounce his discoveries. His truth was too disruptive for the established order. Consider Nikola Tesla, a visionary inventor whose ideas about electricity and energy were far ahead of his time. He dreamt of providing free energy to the world. He died largely unrecognized, impoverished, and alone in a hotel room, while others, arguably less brilliant but more adept at navigating the systems of power and commerce, built fortunes based on his work or lesser ideas. His genius was too radical, too unconventional, and back to Schopenhauer himself, one of the most profound, insightful, and brutally honest philosophers of the 19th century. His work explored the nature of suffering, will, and existence with unparalleled depth. During most of his life, he was largely ignored by the academic establishment, dismissed, overlooked, living in relative obscurity and disdain. Recognition only came late in his life and more fully after his death. His clear-eyed view of reality was too pessimistic, too challenging for the optimistic, conventional spirit of his time. The pattern is undeniable. It repeats with haunting consistency. The deeper the insight, the more fundamental the questioning. Often, the more intense the pushback, the more profound the isolation, the more violent the rejection from the comfortable consensus. But why? What is it about the thinker that provokes such a strong negative reaction? It's because the genuine thinker is an anomaly within the system. They don't fit neatly into the predefined categories. They don't simply repeat the accepted scripts. They don't blindly obey the unwritten rules of social conformity. They observe, often from a slight distance, even when participating. They analyze, they connect dots others don't see. They question what everyone else accepts as normal or obvious. And perhaps most disturbingly for the status quo, they point out the contradictions, the hypocrisies, the inconsistencies, the inconvenient truths that the collective works very hard to ignore or paper over. This inevitably generates discomfort. It can provoke resentment in those who feel exposed or challenged. It can instill fear in those whose power or position relies on the maintenance of the current illusions. And society as a collective entity often does not forgive those who force it to look too closely in the mirror, especially when the reflection reveals flaws and uncomfortable truths. This rejection doesn't always manifest as dramatic historical persecution like that of Socrates or Galileo. Often it's far more subtle. It plays out in the small, everyday interactions. In the fabric of your daily life, it comes in that moment during a conversation where you share a carefully considered thought and you see the shutters come down in the other person's eyes. You feel the atmosphere chill and you realize instinctively that you need to retreat, to stay silent, to dial back your intensity, to avoid being labeled once again as too much, too serious, too negative, too intellectual. It comes from that persistent, nagging feeling of not quite belonging anywhere, of being slightly out of sync with the rhythm of the group, of watching social rituals and interactions as if you were an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. It comes from the quiet frustration of having insights, ideas, perceptions that you feel are valuable, even important, but finding no receptive audience, no one who truly understands or appreciates the depth of your perspective, feeling like you're speaking a slightly different language. This historical and personal loneliness, it's the weight the deep thinker often carries, but understanding why it happens is the first step towards liberation. It's not about you being flawed. It's about the nature of deep thought itself, clashing with the societal preference for comfort and conformity. Now let's bring in another perspective, Napoleon Hill, a master student of success, achievement, and the power of the mind. While he focused heavily on achieving tangible goals, His principles offer profound wisdom for navigating the inner world, especially when facing adversity like social misunderstanding. Hill emphasized the power of a definite chief aim. For you, the deep thinker, perhaps your aim isn't just career success or wealth. Perhaps your definite chief aim involves understanding truth, living authentically, using your unique perspective to contribute something meaningful, even if it's not widely understood initially. Feeling isolated can challenge this aim, but Hill would urge you to hold on to it fiercely. Your purpose is valid, even if society doesn't immediately affirm it. Hill spoke of the mastermind principle, the synergy created when two or more minds work together in perfect harmony towards a common goal. For the thinker who feels isolated, this principle is crucial, yet challenging. The rejection you feel stems from a lack of a mastermind connection with the general populace. Their minds are not operating on the same frequency towards the same aim of deep understanding. But Hill's principle points to the solution. Seek out your mastermind partners. Find those few individuals, online or offline, who do resonate with your depth, who share your curiosity, who welcome your questions. These connections, however rare, are vital. They provide the affirmation, stimulation, and support the wider world may deny you. Don't expect everyone to be part of your mastermind. Focus on finding the right few. Consider economic incentives. Jobs and careers often reward fitting into corporate culture, following established procedures and not rocking the boat. Innovation is desired, but usually within safe, predefined boundaries. Truly disruptive thinking that challenges the core business model or power structure is often suppressed. These are not necessarily conspiracies. They are emergent properties of a complex system prioritizing stability and efficiency, often at the expense of deep truth and individual authenticity. The system perpetuates itself, and underlying all this are common cognitive biases. Mental shortcuts that help us process information quickly, but often lead us away from truth. Confirmation bias. We seek out and favor information that confirms our existing beliefs, ignoring contradictory evidence. This keeps people locked in their comfortable illusions. Groupthink. The desire for harmony or conformity in a group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. Individuals suppress dissenting viewpoints to maintain group cohesion. Availability heuristic. We overestimate the importance of information that is easily available to us, e.g., sensational news, viral opinions, ignoring less accessible but potentially more accurate data. Dunning-Kruger effect. People with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. This explains why some who think very little are supremely confident in their shallow understanding and may dismiss deeper insights from others. Hill stressed applied faith. Not just blind belief, but a deep, unwavering confidence in yourself, your abilities, and your purpose, especially when faced with setbacks or lack of external validation. When the world pushes back against your ideas or your way of being, applied faith means trusting your own perception, trusting your intellect, trusting the insights that come from your deep reflection. It's believing in the value of your unique perspective, even when others dismiss it. It's faith in the importance of your own awakening. Consider Hill's emphasis on going the extra mile. Thinking deeply is going the extra mile, intellectually and existentially. It requires more effort than accepting ready-made answers. It demands more courage than staying within the comfortable consensus. Society often rewards the path of least resistance, but genuine insight and self-understanding require that extra mile of questioning, analysis, and introspection. Recognize the effort you are putting in. It is valuable in itself. Personal initiative is key. Don't wait for society to validate your thinking. Don't wait for permission to explore deep questions. Take the initiative in your intellectual journey. Read the books that challenge you. Seek out the knowledge that expands your understanding. Engage in the reflections that lead to clarity. You are the driver of your own consciousness. Develop a positive mental attitude, but not in a superficial way. It's not about pretending the rejection doesn't hurt or that the isolation isn't real. It's about reframing it. Instead of seeing yourself as rejected, see yourself as discerning. Instead of feeling isolated, recognize you are independent. Instead of thinking you are wrong, understand you are ahead of the curve or seeing a different dimension. Frame the solitude not as failure, but as the necessary space required for deep thought and authentic living. A sign of your commitment to truth over comfort. Hill championed accurate thought. This is the core of the issue. Your commitment to accurate thought, thinking based on facts, logic, evidence, and deep reflection rather than hearsay, emotion, or dogma, is precisely what creates the friction with a world often operating on inaccurate or unexamined thought. Accurate thought forces you to see the inconsistencies and illusions. Don't abandon accurate thought to fit in. Double down on it. It is your greatest asset. Self-discipline is paramount. The discipline to continue thinking deeply when it would be easier to switch off. The discipline to remain true to your insights when faced with social pressure to conform. The discipline to manage the feelings of loneliness or misunderstanding without becoming bitter or arrogant. The discipline to protect your mental space from the noise of superficiality. And finally, learning from adversity. Every instance of being misunderstood, every awkward silence, every subtle rejection. Hill would see these not just as painful experiences but as feedback, as opportunities to learn, to strengthen your resolve, to refine your understanding of human nature and social dynamics, to perhaps learn how to communicate your deeper thoughts more effectively or to discern when silence is the wiser choice. Use the adversity as fuel for your growth and understanding. These principles, often applied to external success, are incredibly powerful tools for navigating the internal landscape of the deep thinker in a shallow world. They provide a framework for resilience, purpose, and self-acceptance. Let's delve deeper now into the specific mechanisms society uses. How does it actually enforce this preference for comfort and conformity? It's not always conscious malice. Often it's systemic. Consider the media landscape. News cycles driven by sensation, fear, and brevity. Social media algorithms designed to maximize engagement through emotion and outrage, not nuanced discussion. Entertainment that often prioritizes spectacle and distraction over substance. These platforms shape perception, limit exposure to diverse or deep thought, and reward superficial interaction. The sheer volume of noise makes deep reflection difficult. Consider the standard educational model in many places, often focused on standardized testing, rote memorization, and producing compliant workers for the existing system. Critical thinking might be mentioned, but truly radical questioning of fundamental assumptions is rarely encouraged. Students learn what to think, more often than how to think independently and critically about the foundations themselves. Conformity is rewarded with grades and credentials. Consider simple social pressure, the fear of ostracism, the human need for belonging. Most people subconsciously learn to adapt their behavior and expressed opinions to match the group norm to avoid rejection. Voicing truly unconventional thoughts risks social exclusion, a powerful deterrent for most. You feel this pressure constantly. These biases act like gravity, constantly pulling thought towards the superficial, the easy, the commonly accepted. Your effort to think deeply requires actively resisting these powerful currents. Why do people choose this? Why embrace comfort over truth? It's not always laziness. Often, it's fear, fear of uncertainty. Deep thinking often reveals more questions than answers, exposing the fundamental uncertainty of existence. Comforting beliefs provide a sense of certainty, even if false. Fear of meaninglessness, confronting reality without. Comforting illusions can sometimes lead to feelings of nihilism or despair, which people instinctively avoid. Fear of responsibility. If you see the truth, you might feel responsible for acting on it, which can be burdensome. Ignorance allows for passivity. Fear of ostracism. As discussed, the social cost of non-conformity is high. Cognitive dissonance. Holding conflicting beliefs causes mental discomfort. It's easier to reject the challenging new information, your deep thought, than to change a long-held comfortable belief. People cling to the familiar, the validated by the tribe, the path of least resistance. Your path, the path of the deep thinker, is inherently the path of most resistance in this context. So, what does this mean for you, carrying this burden and gift? First, acknowledge the burden. It's real. The loneliness is real. The frustration is real. The feeling of alienation is real. Don't deny it or pretend it doesn't exist. Validating your own experience is the first step. It is hard sometimes to see clearly in a world that seems determined to look away. It is painful to be misunderstood or dismissed, but then you must recognize the gift. Seeing clearly, thinking deeply, perceiving patterns others miss. This is an extraordinary capacity. It allows for a richer, more textured understanding of life. It opens doors to profound insights. It enables genuine creativity and problem solving. It is the source of your authenticity. It allows you to live a life of conscious awareness rather than passive acceptance. The cost is isolation, perhaps, but the reward is truth. Meaning, authenticity. Which currency do you value more? There's also a responsibility that comes with this gift. A responsibility to cultivate it, to hone your thinking, to seek knowledge and understanding. And perhaps a responsibility to find ways to share your insights, even if challenging. Not necessarily by arguing in casual conversations, but perhaps through writing, creating, teaching, or simply living authentically as an example. How do you manage this in practice? How do you navigate this world? Crucially, find your tribe. As Napoleon Hill advised with the mastermind principle, you are not alone, even if it feels that way. There are others like you. Seek them out, intentionally. Online forums dedicated to philosophy, science, art, spirituality. Book clubs focused on challenging literature. Meetup groups for specific intellectual interests. Connect with individuals who share your curiosity and respect your depth. These connections are your lifeline. They provide the intellectual stimulation, emotional support, and sense of belonging you crave. Even one or two such connections can make a world of difference. Stop trying to get validation from those incapable of giving it, and focus on finding those who are. Learn strategic communication. This doesn't mean being fake. It means being wise. Recognize that not every environment is suitable for deep conversation. Sometimes the wisest course is polite engagement on a superficial level, or even silence. Save your deepest thoughts for receptive audiences, your tribe, your journal, your creative work. Choose your battles. You don't need to correct every flawed argument you hear. Learn to read the room and adapt your communication style without compromising your core integrity. Sometimes asking gentle questions is more effective than making bold statements. Protect your mental space. The constant barrage of superficiality and noise can be draining and discouraging. Be intentional about curating your information intake. Limit exposure to shallow media or overly negative online environments. Spend time in nature, read challenging books, listen to thoughtful music, Create pockets of quiet and solitude in your life for reflection and recharging. Your mind is your sanctuary. Guard its gates. Cultivate resilience. Develop emotional resilience to handle the inevitable moments of misunderstanding or dismissal. Remind yourself why this happens. The mirror effect, comfort versus truth. It's not about you personally. Practice self-compassion. It's okay to feel hurt or frustrated. Focus on your internal validation, your own sense of integrity and commitment to truth, rather than seeking external approval from everyone. Embrace your uniqueness. Stop seeing your depth as a problem to be fixed. Start seeing it as your superpower. Your unique perspective is valuable precisely because it's different. The world needs people who see beyond the surface, even if it doesn't always realize it. Innovation, progress, art, philosophy, they all come from those who dare to think differently. Find meaning within, not just without. External validation is fleeting. True meaning often comes from the internal journey. The satisfaction of understanding something deeply. The integrity of living authentically. The connection with your own inner truth. The pursuit of your definite chief aim, guided by your unique insights. Even if your journey is solitary at times, it can be profoundly meaningful. Contribute your value. Don't let the fear of rejection silence you completely. Find ways to contribute your unique perspective. Maybe it's through your work, your art, your writing, your conversations with your tribe, or simply by the way you live your life with integrity and awareness. Your way of seeing is a resource. Use it. This path isn't easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, discipline. It demands that you constantly choose authenticity over conformity, truth over comfort. But it is the path of the awakened mind. It is the path of a life lived with depth and meaning. Trust your perception, that feeling that something is wrong, that there are hidden layers. It's not a delusion. It's the beginning of sight. The discomfort you feel in superficial environments is not a flaw in you. It's a sign of your attunement to something deeper. The loneliness is not a mark of failure. It's the space required for independent thought to flourish. You are not broken. You are breaking free. Free from the illusions. Free from the comfortable slumber. Free to see the world and yourself with clarity. Embrace the journey. Nurture your intellect. Seek your tribe. Protect your inner peace. And never, ever apologize for thinking too deeply or seeing too much. Your perspective is needed. Your clarity is valuable. Your courage to see is your strength. Keep thinking. Keep questioning. Keep seeing. The world may not always understand you, but your own understanding, your own authenticity is the ultimate reward. Live with wisdom. Live with courage. Live as the awakened individual you are becoming. Outro music begins softly, thoughtful, and uplifting. If this conversation resonated with you, if you felt seen, understood, validated, then perhaps you've found a connection here. Continue this journey of exploration. Subscribe to stay connected with this perspective. Share your thoughts, your experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community of deep thinkers. Thank you for your time, for your courage, for your willingness to see.